Drug racing. Do you know what that is? Not drug of hiyo ya madawa, it's drug of D-R-A-G. We pronounce it in Kizungu. It's drag.
Drag race.
What's the difference between drag and drag?
Drag and drag.
You drag it. So drag racing.
Yeah.
And it's where we see this. That is, they close a road, and then there are vehicles that come, and they are competing. For what purpose? Is it just people who have money and they want to show off their cars, that they want to do this? Apparently, it's a big thing, and it's a growing sport, not just in Kenya, but across East Africa. And Umang Soni, who is the director of Delta Motorsports and an expert race driver, is our guest for the next hour. We're going to discuss this. Umang, karibu sana.
Thank you so much, Eric. So, like you say, my name is Umang Soni, director at Delta Motorsports Club. And we organize quite a lot of these races, including the drag races, the circuit racing, and quite a few others, which are in the pipeline. So yeah, like you said, drag racing is a growing sport. There's quite a lot of interest behind it. There's a lot of stakeholders behind it, and people really enjoy all these different forms of racing. And there's also the circuit racing that we do as well, which is around certain tracks, but it's just an event that we concluded last weekend, which was, we called it the Race Wars. And we did one in 2019. This last weekend was our second event after almost 5.5 years. And we just wanted to see how we can organize an event where all the drivers can come together, they can enjoy themselves, and also create an experience for the fans, the spectators who come and watch, and sort of create opportunities for big corporates to sort of come out there, market themselves. And it's all about the experience, right, at the end of the day.
Is it?
Yeah, I mean, you see, the thing is that the drivers are really competing out there. They're putting everything they've got. But also for the fans and all, they also want to come, and they're obviously following a lot of the drivers. The fans come based on the drivers you have on the day of the event. There's certain following. But they also come out to see, the extreme level of competitions that's there. And together with that, they also need to have some sort of an experience around it as well. There is those periods where there's some bit of silence around those races. So the fans also need something to do while they're waiting for the next set of races or whatever it is, right? But what I can say is that the level of competition, especially on the drag racing, it hasn't been publicized as much, but it's quite high out there.
Is there a reason why it hasn't been publicized as much? Is that more from the community saying this is our thing, or are you inviting a lot more publicity now?
Yeah, so I mean, we're getting there. There's quite a bit of eyeballs around it. It's just that it's a growing sport in the country. We started at grassroots levels. We can tell you that the participants and the drivers are really out there. The cars that we have today and the level of power that they're running is really out there. We may not compare ourselves to some of the international cars, but they are quite high up.
We're somewhere.
They're getting there.
I'm sorry to take you back, but what's drag racing? If it doesn't have anything to do with like RuPaul, that would be a reference point for a lot of people.
Yeah,
RuPaul's Drag Race.
Right. So drag racing is basically there's a couple of forms of drag racing. There's the 1/8 mile, the 1/4 mile, and the 1/2 mile. We normally do the 1/4 miles, and sometimes there are some 1/8 miles that are organized. So 1/4 mile is basically across 402 meters, two cars that go head to head, trying to get off the start line to the finish line first, basically. And then we have the formats, the groups.
100-meter dash, but for cars, basically.
400-meter dash.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was trying to put it like
yes, correct.
Usain Bolt.
It's a sprint.
Yeah.
For cars.
Like a quick.
Or Manyala.
Yes, like a sprint across to the other finish line, right?
Let's talk about circuits. Do we have any circuits? Because I remember famously former Machakos governor Alfred Mutua telling us that one day there would be a Machakos Grand Prix.
Formula One.
Do we have any circuits that are specifically for motorsport, or do we sort of improvise?
So yeah, we do improvise. It is a dream to have a circuit in Kenya in the near future, hopefully. But we used to have circuits in the past. We had a circuit in Nakuru called Langa Langa. We had a circuit in Embakasi, and a third one I don't remember where. In fact, I've also heard that the circuit that was there in Embakasi obviously is now concrete jungle, but some of the warehouses in there still have the markings from the circuit back in those days. And the Langa Langa circuit was actually created for the Formula at that time. And there was quite a bit of racing going on in those days. So what we're trying to do
What
is...
happened? We had the circuit. We could have been hosting motorsport events.
Yeah.
What happened?
So we don't know. I mean, a lot of probably the land was sold in those days. There was obviously need for investments around the area and to get better return out of the value of the land in those areas. However, there is still quite a bit of land available, hopefully around the place, which is accessible, to Nairobi. A lot of these drivers are around the Nairobi area, and it'd be great to have something within half an hour time to get to these tracks. So it can be used for racing primarily, but also for hosting commercial events, a day out for big automotive industry players in the market. Just like any racetrack around the world, there are people who go and test their cars, also tweaking around their cars. It's an accessible thing, right? And it becomes like the home of motorsport. It's not just tarmac. You can have the go-karting tracks. We have quite a bit of go-karting tracks. That was the second question. We improvise. But if you have a go-karting track around there, some off-road area, and it becomes basically like a festival. There's a lot of other things that come around a racetrack, amenities. You can make a lot of commercial value out of it, sort of an industrial park around it. So it's got to support in with everything, right? What we do currently for circuit racing is we use a lot of the existing go-karting tracks. There's a couple of them which are a little bit wider. We can use them, but we can't go full circuit racing like, have multiple cars on the track. It's one car at a time. They sprint around the circuit to try and get the best lap possible. Okay. So we're working with what we've got, but it's definitely a growing sport. There's a lot of potential out there. There's a lot of talent out there. A lot of kids are going into go-karting and lacking the opportunity to move forward. There are some that have made it across to Formula 3 level, Formula 4 level and all of that, right? But to see how we can grow this interest that is there around tarmac motorsports and to take it even further.
Yeah, how can we grow that interest? I remember I'd take my sons for go-karting for fun. And the older, I remember the person who was running the place was saying, oh, he's really good. I'm like, I don't know what to do with that information, because now you're telling me, because you were saying, he can compete, right? And every Saturday when they come here, they compete. It sounded far-fetched. I got nervous as well about the costs that were offered. So how do you make it tangible and accessible for people who also want to get their kids there and get them into it for the long haul?
So you see, it's the same thing that we face. We need the support. The drivers need the support. We need the infrastructure, first of all, to be built around this kind of racing. To be able to see, do we have a racetrack in the country, first of all, if you want to bring in this kind of racing? We have the go-kart tracks, which some of them are FIA approved for go-karting. And that gives...
In Kenya?
In Kenya. Okay. So Whistling Moran being one of them. There's a couple of others. And what happens is, this gives a stepping stone sort of a thing. It's not really a stepping stone, but the platform for some of these drivers to now see if they can make it forward. But it's just, we have to have some sort of a coordinated process around these things. And there's quite a lot in terms of even the cars. So go-karting, yes, is there. There's quite a bit of tracks that people can use for going into go-karting, but it's also about the cars. We have the drag racing. It's still at grassroots level. FI is also developing their rules around how to host this drag racing. We also have drifting that is coming up, which is a huge culture around the world. But all of it is possible once you have some sort of infrastructure that is available to promote these. And FI is very interested, because you see what happens with this is when you organize any form of racing to do with cars, it also helps put people off the streets into an organized, safer event. So that is the whole idea behind this as well, that we organize some of these drag races, we organize circuit racing. We've already trained our team for drifting competitions in future, where we will be able to, it's a little bit different with drifting. It's not about how quickly you can go around the circuit, it's how you can take your car sideways around the circuit and all these sort of things, and how do you judge these events. So we will do some trial events in the near future to see if we are ready to host a competition for drifting. And also, it's not just hosting the competition itself, it's also having the cars available or ready for this kind of competitions. There's been a lot of interest behind drags. There's tons of cars that are prepared for it. I mean, we can host an event, and if everybody was ready at the time, we'll have over 100+ entries. And not only the cars, but the bikes. We work hand in hand with bikes because it's Tarmac Motorsports at the end of the day, right? So even with the bikes, 2 weekends ago, before our event, we had the bike event, which we help with the timing system. We have the professional timing system we use for these drag races. And they also had over 57 entries with a few bikes missing out on the day. So the community is big, there's quite a lot of stakeholders, and there's a lot that can be achieved if the right sort of support is provided, for this kind of
Walk me through how to be part of the community, first from a spectator point of view and also from a participant point of view. What's the entry point? It could be that there's a calendar of events. How does somebody kind of begin to make their way through just to see whether I'm just interested as a spectator, but I also might be interested in being one of the drivers?
Yeah, so, as a spectator, so first of all, there is a calendar that's put out at the beginning of the previous year, just highlighting what events we have coming up in the following year. Obviously, things do change around, so sometimes the calendar shifts a little bit, but there's quite a lot of marketing that goes around the event as well. Once the event is ready, sometimes when you're closing roads, there's quite a bit of permits you need to get. So once those are finalized is when we really start the process. This one, we started the process around a month and a half ago, but we didn't disclose the location because we're still waiting on some permits. But at least there is an event coming up, and we were quite sure at the stage we had reached that we'll get it. So that's how spectators find out that there's an event coming. Tarmac events generally are marketed pretty well. A lot of people know about this. Some a little more than the others because of the budgets and all this sort of thing and the size of the event. But for a spectator who gets interested, they always have the opportunity to get in touch with the clubs. What we normally do as Delta Motorsports is on circuit racing. We organize things called track days where we invite people, and it's like I said, it's grassroots level, right? You can come with whatever vehicle you've got. Come on some of these track days, come and try your car out. You never know, where you stand against the other drivers who are really at a competitive level. And we've got even the circuit racing has become highly competitive, where people are racing, to even get that 1/10 of a second to be able to get to the next step, to beat the record of the track and things like that. So we have a process where, people do get in touch. They say they're interested. It's a simple process, right? There's not much of an investment like as you're at grassroots level for you to be able to bring your car and just race it on the tracks.
I was thinking about the structures of it all. If we have an event, for example, at ICD, what does it take from a regulation perspective to have that happen? And are there ways to make it easier? Then also from, a participant perspective, I'm a car girl, but would I be qualified, quote unquote, to come and, race, and what are the structures for me getting in? Or I'm a car guy and I'm like, I have a fast car, I can drive. Does that get me in?
Yeah, so like I said, it's an all-inclusive approach we have, especially when we're at grassroots level. There is quite a bit that goes into organizing an event. You have to get, if you're closing a road, generally you have to get the permits of all the authorities involved. But most of our events are on either airstrips or on a circuit, and we normally have the permits that are issued from the federation. So that is what goes into organizing these events. But as a driver, as a car girl or a car guy, like I said earlier, the regulations are quite eased in the beginning stages because you're growing a grassroots motorsport. If you make it difficult for people to come and take part,
it's a barrier.
It's a barrier to entry, right? And what we are trying to do is trying to remove as many barriers as possible, but also ensuring that we make it as safe as possible. There's a safety plan always in place for these events. The drivers are always briefed before the events, and that's why we say we hold some of these training events where people can come and see what it takes to be able to race on the circuits. It's not as complicated as it sounds. The level of entry is quite simple to these events until we grow to the next stage, when the required support is available, the sponsorships are there, and building cars for motorsports takes quite a bit. A lot of, especially if you see some of the drag cars that we have in the country, they have put in a lot of money for these cars to perform at the level that they're performing. If you take we still have older technology, over 20-year-old cars like the Subarus, the Mitsubishi Evos that do take part in these events. There's quite a bit of investment in those. But we also have the later technology like the Germans, the German vehicles, the Volkswagen Golfs, BMW 340s, 540s. A lot of these vehicles are coming out for drags, and they have a lot of potential. They have the platform that you can build them to really good horsepower to be able to compete in these events. So it's very accessible as of now.
I was going to ask about that because it is an expensive venture when you're building your car yourself. Is that the model worldwide, or are there other ways in which, when the sport grows, we could have ways to fund, building cars and getting better at it, and training and safety and all of that.
Yeah, so that's what we are looking to do. Obviously people are building their cars by themselves. They also reach out to potential sponsors to see how they can get support, because it is expensive. You take it that we have 2 to 3 or 4 drag events in a year. They need to ensure that the car is prepared for the next one, because the fans are also waiting to see that car in the next event. They all come in anticipation to see what that car is going to do. But the call out here is, especially us as event organizers and as a driver myself, it is quite expensive to maintain these cars and to also build them to be able to compete in this event. So the thing is that if we can get, people to come out and support, they can pick out their drivers, they can see how they can help improve. You have to recognize the talent at the end of the day. There are many people who have the talent but don't have the funds.
They just don't have the car.
They don't have the car. And there are many drivers like that who miss out because they don't have any support. So the idea, what Delta is trying to do, is to see how, first of all, we can organize good events, and at the same time, we're also looking out for sponsors who can come in and support, some of this talent that is out there, and people who have the cars. Some of the sponsors would be looking to try and get the best drivers out there, right? And who have been performing well in the history. But also, you have to have an eye out for some of these talents that are out there as well. And we are there to assist. We know which drivers are capable of doing what.
Give me an idea. Sorry. I've got a base model Volkswagen Golf, and I want to get it race ready. Give me how much am I looking at?
So it really depends on what you want to build the car for.
Drag racing.
Drag racing, and how competitive you want to get. If you want to win, there's quite a bit of money you'll be looking to put into it. Figure-wise, I don't know what kind of figure I can give you, because there are people who even actually bring in built, ready crate motors from outside, built engines, built gearboxes, and you go all out. You're looking to spend close to $80,000-$90,000 or more, maybe. There are people who just basically upgrade their stock cars, bigger turbo, bigger injectors, all these sort of things, and to be able to get to a competitive level. What I normally tell a lot of the drivers who are just coming in is just get yourself out there with what you've got, see where you place yourself, and you start building from there. The same goes for drag racing, the same goes for circuit racing as well. You don't want to push yourself too hard into corners and you're not used to it. Just take one corner at a time, and you'll see where you can place yourself and you can improve from there.
Man, spending all that money for a 400-meter, 800-meter race. Okay, what's an optimal drag car? What does it need to have in terms of like engine capacity? What's the tune-up like? The tires, what kind of tires? Are they just ordinary tires? The suspension, is it just ordinary suspension? And then, inside the cage of the car, do you do anything for safety?
So, there's no ideal car for drag racing. You can build any car to drag race. And like I said earlier, the level we're at, we're not as far as the cars internationally are. However, you have some certain 2 liters who can do over 1,000, 1,500 horsepower. You have 5 liter, the V8s that come in and put in similar horsepower. So it all depends on what is your preference. The most important thing is which car is going to take the least investment to get you on the top. But it also goes out to preference sometimes. People see that this guy's going to be cheaper to build, but no, I'm a BMW guy, so I'm going to go for a BMW sort of a thing, right? And it also depends on accessibility of the garages that are out there as well, who would help you build these vehicles. So there's quite a bit of garages in the country that are there. We've got Import Performance Parts who do a lot of these Evos and Subarus, and then can probably work on any car. But we also have like Race Q Garage that work on Germans. We have Ungarage who also work on a lot of the Germans. Boosted Auto working on JDMs and Germans. So it's sort of, I don't know if you've picked, but there's been a battle between the JDMs, which is the Japanese cars, versus the Germans. And the Germans have been dominating in the recent past. Back then was all JDM. Now the Germans are coming. So, it's like a constant battle as well. So I finally
Which is another subculture.
It's another subculture in itself. So
from the garages to the following, to like how deep is the beef? Is it Man United Arsenal level, or is it like
50 Jaru?
It is.
That's a good one.
So it has its own level of competition. So Germans have been dominating for the past few years, but we have some JDMs who have really come up to the top. We have one of the cars, Leroy, drives an old Subaru GC8, and he's been given quite a lot of the Germans a bit of an issue. And I raced my Evo 9 in 2019 at Tatu City. We held the event there, And I finally got the car ready for this particular event we held this last weekend, and that also gave trouble to quite a few of the cars. Obviously, you know, the thing is, you've got a fast car, but the pressure that you have off the line is what makes all the difference. How do you handle that pressure? How ready are you at the start line, and how are you going to perform till the finish line? It's only 400 meters, but it's that 10 seconds that really give you the adrenaline.
At the very beginning.
Yes, from the time you get off the pit to the start line, how prepared are you to get off the line and to cross the finish line?
Yeah.
It's those 10 seconds that really make the biggest.
Which is now going to the next question. Take me through an optimal driver. If I was scouting for a driver, what do I look for? What's that driver?
So when you look for, so like I said, you know, okay, we're talking about drag racing, so I'll tell you about drag racing, right? It's now the driver's readiness for the race, how prepared he is, how mentally calm he is going onto the start line, and then you've got to look out. Okay, so let's say keeping the car constant. If the car is perfectly set up for a drag race, you know, how is he able to launch the car off the line? And then we have that the tree system, you know, the light system, which tells you when to go. You got to be ready for when the light goes green, you got to go. You cannot sit on the line, because if you mess up the launch, that's it, you're done. You know, now you're playing catch up to the car ahead of you. And if you're at same power levels, there's no catching up, right? And if you have just a little bit of edge, it'll all depend on how quickly you launch that. Now, you see the difference also is that we have a lot of these older cars that are manual, and we have the later technology, which is automatic, and there's DSGs and all of that, right? So it's, if you're looking at
DSG?
DSG is the automatic transmissions, where you don't really have to worry about your gear shifts or the paddle shift.
That's the correct name for automatic. Because you just say, get in the automatic.
Yeah, so they are the automatic cars, but some of these race cars have the dual clutch systems and all of that. So, you know, the next, you know, the gear shifting is pretty quick. So if you're looking at a manual car and you want to see how you're going to pick your driver, is how quickly he can shift through the gears as well and not miss out on any gears. Obviously, the car has to be ready and set up for that as well.
I know we've gone through preparedness and racing. I want to go a step back and find out how Umang got involved in this. How did you get into it? What was the passion or motivation behind it?
So growing up, we've always been interested in cars, my brother and I. My father also being our inspiration. You know, he's not been into racing. We're not a racing family. We've come from humble beginnings, but he's always been a very fast driver. And when we're going to, you know, road trips and all these sort of things, you see how he drives. It's probably been what has actually, you know, brought this in us, or maybe it's the genes or what, I don't know. But we've always been interested in cars, and hopefully, you know, we hope that one day we'll get into the, I didn't see myself here, you know, back then. But there was some sort of a tarmac scene that was coming up. Obviously, we had our Mitsubishi Evos and the Subarus. They were just sitting around. We used to enjoy them on the weekends. But when we saw this coming up with some of the friends, tarmac racing sort of emerged again after those racetracks disappeared. Somewhere around 2011, 2012. We used to do things called the Great Runs, where we just go enjoy our cars. We go to a children's home, you know, do some donations, you know, and enjoy our cars back home. And some sort of racing began. You know, we call it the hill climb events, where the roads were closed. You know, we had a few of those hill climbs. We enjoyed those races. They're organized pretty well. Obviously, like I said, you know, grassroots, you start from somewhere, right? You might not know what you need to do fully in terms of safety and all these sort of things. But then from there, you know, things went on to drag racing on airstrips. We found a few circuits that were built, like the TGRV, Whistling Morans, and slowly went on to track racing as well. So there's different forms of racing, different drivers. So how I got into it is just basically going and enjoying myself. In fact, I just went to watch one of the first races, how it's being organized, all these sort of things. And one of the organizers of the day was racing, and he was the only one with a Mitsubishi Evo. So when I showed up with the Evo, he's like, you have to race. I said, I'm not ready to race. I didn't come here to race. I came here to watch you and the rest of the drivers. He's like, there's no way, you've got to go. So it's that simple in terms of preparedness. If you've got a fast car, you can sort of jump into it. Obviously, there's a little bit more now in terms of scrutineering, making sure the car's ready to race, you know, the safety equipment within the car and all of that. So he pushed me into it, and surprisingly enough, I didn't do that badly. Okay. Right? And I had a bit of a broken shock in front, or whatever the case is, right? So that sort of, you know, and I have some sort of sense of what people like to see around racing, what drivers expect, what fans and spectators will expect, how to make these events better. So then in 2018, we formed a club with one of my colleagues called Joe Marai. He's been in racing and tarmac motorsports and car shows for quite some time. And we said, let's let's form a club which can probably organize racing in a more safer manner. We get some of these regulations in. We build our own regulations for drag racing, for tarmac race, circuit racing. We are now building for the drifting as well. So that's how I got into this racing scene, by building the club. And the whole idea for me was not just organizing these events, is to see how we can take Tarmac Motorsports higher up, right? We want to get it back to the mainstream, not back, but we want to get it to the mainstream. We want to see how it can be recognized by, like how the rallies were recognized. We've got the WRC right now. So the idea was to see how we can get some space where we can come up with a racetrack. Obviously, with government support, it becomes much, much easier to see how we can build the infrastructure that's required to take Tarmac Motorsports forward. And if we have the WRC, it'd just be better to try and see if we can, in future, possibly bid for Formula One in the country as well, like our neighbor Rwanda is doing.
Oh, wow.
But if you look at the racing that has led into Safari Rally, so you can see there's a progression there. Even go-karting going into Formula One. Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the next step for a drag race? Like, is there like an international circuit of drag racing where you're like the way we have the Formula One circuit? Formula One going across the season. Do you have something like that? Where you race here and then you go, next one you're in Rwanda, next one you're in Bangladesh, next one you're in the UK.
So there is a lot of drag racing that happens around the world. It's quite a popular sport. We have the NHRA drags in the US and quite a lot of these international events, but it's more about how you race within Kenya itself. And you see, to be able to go out and race this, so what we're trying to do is we're getting together with who we've got around us right now. So we have obviously the Kenyan drag racing scene. We sort of lead in East Africa right now, but I know the Tanzanians are doing some great builds out there. Uganda also recently they ended up building a racetrack. They built a drag strip in around Jinja area. So you can see that the sport is coming up. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to organize with the guys in East Africa to see how we can have like an East African drag championship sort of a thing. So it can make it some sort of an all-inclusive sort of race. So drag racing reaches to a point where, if you go to the US, you're seeing some of the cars that are doing around 8 seconds for the quarter mile pass, 7 seconds for the quarter mile pass, whereas we are here at around high 9s to low 10s and things like that, right? So it's about seeing how we can grow out there one step at a time. Going and racing out there in the US, it's possible, but you have to take your car out. There's quite a bit of logistics involved. We just need to see how we can get Kenya to that level first. And we are at a much higher altitude. The fuel that's available is not that great, unfortunately. So people have to bring in a lot of the race fuels and ethanols and all these sort of things to be able to get to that power level to be able to compete with the drivers out there.
Let's speak to environmental sustainability as well. Is it something that you think about? I just heard you mention fuel, so my mind went there. Whether it's emissions, whether it's whatever it is, how do you kind of integrate sustainability even as you look ahead?
So when you get to motorsports, sustainability becomes a key question. It is something that FIA is also working around. When you get to a lot of these drag races, there's very little you can do, especially with the power you need, the output that you need. So what we try to work around is, the events that we organize, see how we can maintain and manage them well around the sustainability factor. Just, if it's a public road, clean up the area, things like that, and we do other things in terms of CSR through the event organizers and all. There's very little you can do, especially when you need to put out this kind of power levels to work around the emissions of these cars. And it's probably a weekend out. Right?
Switching to EVs?
That's a possibility. I mean, we've seen. I mean, the conversation around EVs out there, right? Everybody's seeing what's happening around the world in terms of EVs. There is the Formula E they have brought in. And there's quite a bit of cars that are really powerful, and they can possibly take part in the drag races, but it's not out there as much. People really like to hear the rumble of the car, the sound of the car. It's all
it's a culture thing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's the
rev.
The rev.
Yeah,
like
sound
electric
of the car.
cars, the fact that you can't hear it, I think it messes with people's minds.
Exactly.
That it's like, why can't I hear
Maybe
the
the new
engine?
culture.
Why can't I hear the engine?
It could be the new culture.
It could be.
Silence. Silence is the new culture.
Yeah, silence is the new one.
Yeah. We are shortly going to be also trying to reach out to Lexus Musa, who is a professional biker. And I think he's one of those who was in the race that was before yours took place. Yes. So you say you work together as well?
Yeah, we work together. In fact, we're also looking to see how we can do a drag festival in the future. and we want to make it an all-inclusive event with the bike and the cars as well. We just need to see how the regulations will match together, because they have their own way of, they have their own regulations through the FIM, and we have the regulations through FIA. So we'll see how we'll come together, but we did work very closely together for these two events to be a great success. We supported them, they supported us as well. And we are seeing how we can sort of, because you can see they had around 50 plus entries, we had 50 plus entries as well. We actually had a small competition for the bikes also within our event. So it's just trying to see how we can work collectively. You know, at grassroots level, you try and do anything and everything to sort of get the sport out there.
Oh yes. Do you have Lexus ready? Ah, he's on the line. Lexus Musa.
Yes.
Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. Are you on the line?
Yes, I'm on the line.
Asante sana. So you are a professional biker. And
yes.
we have Umang Soni here, who is a professional race car driver. You're just both noisy people.
We like to make noise.
You like to make the noise. So we've heard about the cars. You know, what happens, you know, with the drag racing for the cars. How is it different, or how does it compare to the one for biking?
What I would say is the biking needs, let's say, more of a bit of skill, because getting the bike out of the line, that is something else. Most of the time, the bike tends to go up if you dump the clutch, as compared to the car. Yeah.
Which brings in the question of safety.
Safety, when it comes to the safety, we are normally prepared. We have ambulances on site, we have medics, and also we take the precautions of probably putting haze and all that, so that if someone tries to launch and the bike goes up, there is minimal damage.
You know, those bikes, Lexus, are usually quite heavy and humongous and powerful. Is there any pre-qualification that you go through to make sure that the person who's actually coming to participate in a race is a qualified biker?
Definitely, we do all those background checks before you register, and then also before the day of the event, we have a practice day so that we can normally see how the rider performs and all that.
All right. From a regulation perspective, something Umang mentioned is that you're regulated by different bodies international. What does the regulation for bikes look like in Kenya, for motorbikes and motor sport in general, actually?
What I would say is, right now we are trying to work on those regulations and all that. But we are almost getting there.
Right.
The ones which we are working on are mostly for off-road, that is MX. Yeah, and then when it comes to the tarmac, it's a bit different compared to the one for off-road.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lexus. I wanted to hang on that regulation point and even just dive a little bit deeper. The regulation exists internationally with the FIA Federation.
Yep.
International, something automobile, right?
Yes.
So they regulate motorsport globally. But locally, what's the government approach to motorsport? Is it like, okay, let them do their thing? Is it supportive, or is it prohibitive as well? And I'll go specifically with drag racing as opposed to like rallies and things like that, which have seen, of course, huge government support. Yeah.
Yeah, so look, the federation, well, we have a federation in the country that is registered with FIA, and FIA normally pass through the regulations through a federation to the country's sports. And Tarmac got recently involved in 2020. We got ourselves registered with the federation, and we'll be working closely on how to develop these, our local regulations around what FIA has built. And they have this section for grassroots motorsports. So like I said, there hasn't been much of knowledge on the Tarmac racing in the country, and we are trying to see how we can improve that. We want the government to actually know that there is some tarmac racing going on in the country, and it falls within the FIA regulations as well, to see how, and all based on grassroots level. There's certain regulations that you can relax on to be able to build the sport, because if you make it prohibitive like we discussed in the beginning, then the sport is going to die before it even starts.
Would you say, what are the regulations currently that you would say are a little bit prohibitive to the growth of the sport?
There's very little, so to say. It's been quite flexible. It's been very helpful to see how the regulations have been flexible to help the beginning drivers to come into the racing. And there's a lot of challenges around enforcing some of the regulations out there as well. A lot of people don't want to abide by some of these things, so we tell them, this is important for us to be able to grow the sport and for safety of yourself, your car, the spectators, the fans, the officials, the marshals, everybody who's present at site, to ensure that the event runs safely, you are safe, and there's a lot that goes behind making sure that everything is looked after.
How are you integrating sort of like digital and innovation, whether it's data analytics, whether it's I think fan engagement platforms really tend to amplify these kinds of communities. Is that something that's also ongoing?
Yeah, so a lot of it is ongoing at the moment. Trying to engage the fans through social media platforms is the best way to get in touch with most of the fans, whether it's Instagram, X or Twitter, Facebook, all these social media platforms. There's a team that works behind it to try and understand what the spectators, the fans really enjoyed watching. We also do the same with the drivers as well. We try to engage and see what they would like to see, how, and we also have to, as an organizer, understand that some of the drivers will ask for everything in the world. What is it that we can give out which is fair for other competitors? It cannot be molded for a certain number of drivers. It has to be fair for all the drivers that are taking part in the events.
Okay. Are there a lot of women and young people coming in
yes,
as well?
There's quite a lot. There's a lot of women who have come up in sports recently. I mean, obviously they tend to pull quite a lot into the rally. There are certain of them who started in tarmac, and they're doing rallies, they're doing autocross, they're doing the RX. RX is a new sport that has come up as well, and it's also partly tarmac, partly gravel. And they started at that People's Park that was built by our previous Machakos governor. And we also use it for some of our circuit racing as well. It's a great area to go out and, get some of these cars driving around. So there is quite a bit of...
something.
Yeah, they did
in
something.
Machakos.
It's a closed road. It's a road which is around the People's Park, so it can be used right now. Obviously, it's not Formula One level, but we definitely need something that can bring the sport up. Infrastructure that is required. There's a lot of people who are interested. They're calling, they're ready to give out a number of, we're looking at around 500 to 1,000 acres to build an all-inclusive motorsports park sort of thing.
You talked about something at the beginning, and you talked about this culture where you bring in the people who are enthusiastic about just motorsport, bringing that entire ecosystem together. The fans, the drivers, the people in the technical side, because there are people who, they don't want to drive, but they want to make the car, right? And so it's an entire ecosystem that can be a huge industry.
Correct.
Paint the picture of how much money there would be if we got serious about this.
So if you look at what people do internationally, just like you've mentioned, there are people who just want to build the car, they don't want to drive it. And there are those that just want to drive the car, they don't want to know what goes into the car, they just know how to drive it, and they say, build me a car. And there are those who also, they drive the car, they build the car, they do everything around the car. There is quite a lot of opportunity. If we can, so what the idea here was, if you have a racetrack, basically, there's the pits there's the workshops that are built around the area. It's quite a large opportunity commercially, and the opportunity is quite out there as well, because the interest is there. The number of drivers that are looking to build these cars, it's like, if I take myself as an example, I would be racing a lot more if the options were available in terms of having a lot more workshops around accessibility to parts. That's another thing. You break something, you're waiting months at times for those parts for you to receive those parts. They've got to be shipped in. There's almost nothing available locally apart from certain small amount of consumables and all that. And it's like a chicken and egg situation for any investor to stock these parts. You might have certain items that are going to sit on the shelf for maybe a year or two and becomes like a bit of a dead investment. So it's just, availability of these parts, the workmanship, and these are conversations we have with a lot of people. But the good thing is, the world has become accessible to almost everyone. It's just now the lead time, which is why it takes a little bit more time for us to build the cars to be ready for the events. Like you see, if I start calling people, say, okay, I'm organizing a drag race, bring your car. You know, if it's a month to the event, I know many people are not going to make it. You know, you'll import some parts, you'll get the car ready, something breaks down. So you can't get it in time. I mean, we had a lot more registered entries than the cars that showed up on the event because they were all tuning and preparing the cars, and they broke down just before the event.
Oh no.
Sort of a thing.
Some feedback online. My prince says our roads were not made for drifters. I'm slowly learning sidewall drifting, and it's scary. We'll speak to that just now.
Yeah.
Paul Mine, I'm a big fan of motor racing, and I wish drag racing is well marketed and advertised. I think one day I'll try it. Namanga Road is good for this. Again, you'll confirm. Smallest ever is like, what does he say? I'm a diehard sports fanatic, but car racing just doesn't rev my engine. What are some of the misconceptions around drag racing and motorsport? One or two that you hear a lot and you're like, that's just false.
So around drag racing, you know, it is true that we don't have, you know, the infrastructure built for racing, which is why we just get down and dirty and see whatever we can get. The ICD road is excellent because it's quite big. It's a very long straight stretch. You can have very huge high horsepower builds, and they have enough run over area where, you know, after you finish the race, you have enough time to slow down and park the car. In drag racing, you know, there's also people talking about, you know, what is enough horsepower to get out there and to be competitive. You know, I'll take my car for example. I prefer to build my cars around track racing, you know, going around in, because, you know, there's a lot of conversation behind drags is just for fast cars and circuit is for fast drivers. Now, what I'd like to say here is, and this is to everybody out there, is that, you know, yes, track racing is how you're going to race your car, how you're going to build your car for it as well, because you don't need all the power to be able to go around a track quickly. You know, you need the suspension, like we spoke about suspension previously, but I didn't mention it. You need to have your car set up properly to be able to take, you know, these sharp corners at the highest speed possible, and to see how you're going to, you know, it is quite true that you have to be a great driver to get the best time out there on circuit. On drag racing, it's not just about fast cars. You can have the fastest cars, like I said earlier, but when you're on the line, it's how good of a driver you are to be able to make sure you put that power down and get across the finish line first. You have to have the skill of being able to launch your car. You have to have that reaction time when the light goes green. You know, you have to be able to time that system across your runs to see how quickly you should leave the line and not jump it as well, because you'll get a disqualification. As soon as you jump the line and it's not gone green, the light goes red.
Wow.
You're DQ'd from that race. So it's also how you're going to get off the line quickly and shift through the gears to be able to make it to the other side first. You can have a fast car, but a slower car will take you if it's a better driver.
What's sidewall drifting?
Sidewall drifting. Drifting is now, you know, as I mentioned, you have to be able to take your car sideways. You use your handbrakes for that. There's a lot of different kind of modification for this. Hydraulic handbrakes, you know, it's not the standard handbrakes that you see in the car with the button. It's a longer lever, which is more accessible. And you're going, sidewall drifting is, you know, going as close as possible to the wall and not touching it. Sideways, not driving in a straight line. So there's a lot of skill required for this. There was a car park drift that was organized by Red Bull, and we had one of the, he's actually in the Guinness Book of Records, Ahmed Daham from Jordan, came down with his car. He came down with his highly built car for drifting, and there was it was organized at KICC. That opened the eyes for a lot of people that drifting is possible in the country. Just need a car park or whatever it is, and you can start drifting there, right? So you start with small training events, because we have to build the cars, we have to build the skill level of the drivers, and it happens through training schools, academies. So there's also a guy there by the name Lu Jin from China. They term themselves as Crabmen, and he's built quite a few cars which are made for drifting, and he's trying to, you know, create some sort of a drifting school. They're just like the drivers now. So we just need people to say, yes, we can do it. We'll have more engagements with them to see how they can support in seeing who is interested and get them out there to try and... He lives a little bit far away from here, which is the limiting factor, probably. Yeah. But he has built quite a number of cars. He's brought in some cars and he's built them from drifting. And Boosted Auto Garage also is going in the drifting direction as well. So they're also helping people to build cars for drifting, whoever's interested.
I was going to ask how you practice all of this safely, because, yeah, you're having events quarterly, perhaps a couple times a year. In the meantime, how do we practice safely?
So that's why I say, you know, practicing for circuit is a little bit easier, because we have these go-karting tracks. You can go out there, test your car. It's not just practice, but, you know, you make a little bit of tweaks with your suspension. You can go out on the track, time yourself. I mean, they don't have the timing system available when we're not there, but you can time yourself, get some sort of an idea of what's working, what's not working. For drag racing, it's just, there are some few dynos out there, so you can put the car on the dyno. SVR Performance has one, FITS has one. You just go through the gears and try and see.
You have to tell us what a dyno is. Yeah.
Dyno is like, it's a system where you can, put your car, they have their rollers, whether it's a front wheel or a two-wheel drive, you can put your car on there. They're normally used for testing to see how much horsepower your car is running, but you can also use for tuning. Tuning also involves a lot of running the car, logging, and then the master tuner out there with the computer is going to see what's working best in terms of your fueling, air-fuel ratio, how much boost you need, how much timing you need, and what kind of fuel you've put in the car as well. It also depends on, if you've got race fuel, you can run better timing, better boost, and better power.
One of the misconceptions that would immediately come to mind is from watching all these movies. First of all, drag racing is an underground movement. Happens illegal in the middle of the night. And then there's all this betting happening. So there's a lot of, money laundering and all. That's one. It's like cockfighting. So you organize this cockfight somewhere and nobody knows about it. But there's a lot of money being... So those are some of the misconceptions that people have. How would you address those? When people hear drag racing, they're like, okay. So hiyo ukora imekuja Kenya.
Some are rebels.
So definitely there is a big misconception that any form of tarmac racing is street racing, right? Because you need a good road, and where's the infrastructure? We don't have it's out there that we don't have the necessary infrastructure. So what we do as the organizers, we say that, look guys, it's not an illegal street racing event. We are doing it in a closed environment. That's why we close certain roads before we ensure that everything has been taken care of safety-wise. And that's why we go out there to circuits to do the circuit racing. We close airstrips, or we go to airstrips rather. We don't need to close. Some of them are ready to use, and sometimes we close roads like we did. We did another one at Tatu City. They made a really good entrance to their estate or the city, and we used that road as well. So it's basically, it is in everybody's mind that yes, we've brought this to the country, but you got to really go out there and see how are the organizers organizing it, what do they have in place to say that yes, this is a properly organized event.
Is there something like I think about athlete welfare? I don't know whether it matters here, but just the mental and physical well-being of those involved. Is that something that you keep in mind, and what are some of the ways that you're able to support the drivers, the riders, and the community?
Yeah, so there's very little available out there for racing. Like I say, because we're at the grassroots level, it hasn't caught the attention of many that yes, this is something that's required. When a driver goes through one race, he knows he's supposed to win but loses, what do you do to encourage him further? So as organizers, I myself, try to talk to a lot of the drivers. When I see them making certain mistakes, or whether it's on track or on drag racing, I talk to a lot of these guys, and tell them, you got to remain calm. Especially, when you're going for your final race, for example. A lot of people will come in and give you do this. The guy's already confused. He's gonna mess it up, right? So a lot of this, yes, it is required. It is available out there. So we are hoping that, as we grow, already we got some really good support from one of the trained doctors by FIA. He's the head for WRC, and he's also got, I think, a position at FIA as a doctor. So he's a highly trained doctor goes by the name Blade Doc, and he's opened a Blade Doc Foundation. And we also do some of these trainings in terms of medical. So for example, if the medical team does not arrive on time, what can you do? So if this training is provided, other drivers would also know that there's a car out there that has an incident. What can you do to safeguard the driver at least, and to avoid further damage or further injury to the driver? So when you talk about personal wellness and all of that of drivers, yes, it is definitely required. It helps improve the performance, being better prepared for the race and all these sort of things.
And the money? Where's the money?
I'm looking for it as well. It's definitely required. People are really putting like a lot of money into it, and it's giving access to people who have the money to bring it into racing. But like I said, these events provide an opportunity for a lot of the corporates out there, especially who are in the automotive industry or whatever industry, because there's, on the day of the event, a lot of opportunities for branding and marketing yourselves, but also all the marketing and publicity that is created before or going into the event and after the event as well. And we do a lot of branding. It's similar to what WRC does. We might not be at that, obviously we're not at that level, but there's a lot that goes into, marketing these events. You'll see some of the events, like our next event, there's a lot of demand for this ICD event to be brought back in September. Our idea was to do one next year now, just because, what it took to organize the event. But there's a lot of demand out there to get this event. So we will start, much, much earlier, because we actually sort of took a step back from drag racing as Delta. We organize more of circuit racing. If you look at the history of the past 5 years, we've done more on circuit than drag. But now that it's come up, we've organized a successful event. The drivers are happy, the fans are happy, the spectators, the whole community is happy. So we might look into considering doing one earlier, and we'll start marketing it much, much earlier. So it gives opportunity for a lot of these corporates to come in and support the event, the drivers, and look out for this talent. But it takes time to build.
Spectators, I just look at ICD. So on one side, there is the fence to the national park, and the other side, there is the industrial parks on the other side. So as the spectators, where are we watching from? Must I be on the front row to watch it? Are you creating places where spectators can actually be more and watch?
Yeah, so if you look at that ICD road, it's actually the road that connects ICD to Southern Bypass, right? So like you mentioned, one side is the fence to the national park, which if you have to stand on that side, you're not going to see anything. Now, between the road and the industrial park, there is that area which has been left probably for service road in future or whatever it is, right? Who have entrances from the ICD, from the road side. So that was the ideal location to put the spectators. That's where everybody can get a view of the Parc Fermé, which is where the cars are sitting and being prepared for their next races or whatever it is, and also for people who are at the start line and at the finish line and in the center as well. So people find their spots. We normally organize vendors that come in, some sort of entertainment around the area, so people are comfortable watching the race. It's not like you have to bring everything to the place.
Umang, it's very interesting.
Very.
Yeah, like you say, you usually say there's a next event coming. You don't say when until you get all the approval. So we'll be looking out for when the next event is taking place.
Yeah.
Umang Soni is the director of Delta Motorsports. He is a race car driver, one very fast driver and a noisy one as well. Just want to keep throwing that one in. Thank you for joining us. And thank you for tuning in to Fixing the Nation, one conversation at a time this week. Have a lovely weekend. We'll be back on Monday, God willing, from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. But the conversations continue on our digital platforms. If you go to YouTube, go to NTV Kenya as a YouTube channel, then go to playlists. Scroll down playlists, you'll find Fixing the Nation. Binge, because there's over 100 videos there. Okay? We'll see you on Monday. Have a lovely one.